Now, step number 2. Hopefully I convinced you that we need to go for self-healing systems now. How do we work with that? There have been several attempts, and in the community, the most acknowledged and understood approach is that of what we call self-control loop. So in the original paper, there was this picture, similar to this picture, which is actually known as the NAPEK, actually control loop. So it's actually you monitor, analyze, plan, execute according to the knowledge base. So the idea is, and we're not talking about only self-healing, we're talking about self-managing system. The idea is to act, you need to actually be connected to the system element that you manage, it's sense of effectors, okay? And you actually need to actually have some knowledge. That's part of the answer to the objection from Michael. How do I do that? The intuition is I cannot find and eliminate all the faults, but I do have some information that I can use later. I don't know how to do that. Do you have any idea about which kind of knowledge we today, every day, in every software system, incorporate in the system to handle unusual bad events which we cannot avoid and cannot eliminate in time during development? There is a very
the management of the exception.
Exactly, exceptionality. Think about it. What is an exceptionality? It's a piece of code that actually serves to solve some problem that we don't know whether they will be, where they will be, when they will happen, how they will happen, what to do with. So intuitively, although I'm not saying, I hope you don't leave the room now saying, we know how to write exceptions, but the intuition is the same. Basically knowledge. We have some core knowledge that we put it on in the middle of the system, and we save in the system. And the knowledge is what so it's something that we know. So we know how we could react if, but we don't know when and how and in which occasion. So basically, the core idea, which is a leitmotiv, every system actually work on this. Everybody explicitly or implicitly acknowledging or not acknowledging, because people are bizarre, strange, but no matter what they do, you read carefully the paper. Whenever you have a self-star, autonomic system, there is some knowledge that is actually either produced or created. Okay. Think about that. If you think I mentioned this metaphor of the human body, okay. I did learn a bit because I had to write a proposal, so I need to do this. I'm not a biologist, but I understand that there are two kinds of receptors, basically, the generic one and the specific one. So basically, when you actually have a problem, there are generic reactions of the body, and there are specific reactions. You can react generically, the body reacts generically to some unexpected situation, or it can react specifically by learning. I'll give you an example. If you have a flu, okay, you get a name in English. Let's say for the flu. I was trying to find something more fancy, but we call it morbillo in Italian. I knew the word. Anyway, you get one of these child diseases, okay, and something. Anyway, you got this child, as a child, most of us, hopefully you too, I don't know whether you're already a generation of over-vaccinated people, but in general, most of the kids used to have these classic diseases, kid diseases, and then they don't repeat. And that's the point. The body learns. So you get the disease, you learn how the body learns how to react, and the next time it's not that the virus, the reason why you don't repeat the disease, flu does not work very well because flu changes. But the reason it will happen. But the reason why you do not, the reason why there are some diseases, chickpot, it's called chickpot. The reason why you get chickpot once, you should tell me if you want. The reason why you get the chickpot once and then you usually don't repeat it anymore, you once actually, as a professor. But the reason not to repeat is that the first time you get it, And then second time, the virus is still there. No doubt. It's not the virus disappears. The virus attacks you, no doubt. Simply, the body has learned how to react to that specific virus, which is exactly the reason why we do not react to the flu every year at the same time. And in case you know the reason is that the flu virus evolves every year, so it's different every year. So every year we do the same, and every year you do not learn, no, maybe better. Every year you learn to react to the last year virus, which is not enough for the next year. Okay, so the idea is basically you have some knowledge, and you will see how to get it. And then you actually go and you need to actually get some information about the current status of the system. You need to actually analyze this information. You need to actually try to understand if what you can do and then do that. Okay. Now, another kind of control loop. This is actually was drawn by Mary Shaw. You may know her. She is a very famous scientist. And she was actually. It's the same thing. You know, you still have your system, you still have your actuators and probes, you still have to actually do some information, try to get some monitoring information, plan, and react. She wanted to basically put in evidence the fact that we need to actually have two kinds of sources of information, the system and the environment. It seems to be trivial, but it's not, because it changes completely the perspective. And then we have the self-healing control loop. Same thing, you still have to monitor and adapt, and you still have the central vision of the models. But you know, you actually have to do two major things, which is predicting failures and localizing faults, plus fixing faults. Okay, I inspired this, or I use this as the guidance for the next thing. So the first things that we actually look at is fault localization and behavioral analysis. So part 2, fault localization and behavioral analysis. The idea is I will tell you how to localize the fault and how to actually predict the failure in some cases. Use that information to predict the failure. I obviously need models and I need information from the system. Okay. But the second part, which we will see, is reliability, redundancy, and self-healing, which is actually the other side. We talk about fixes. Okay, I will not talk about put them together. So, we go to part 2. Now, before continuing, I'd like to understand whether you have questions, objections, suggestions. Everything clear? Not too boring yet? Okay, now I go a completely different level. You know, we move from the blah 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 introductions and laughing as well, from something which is more concrete, more scientific, so we will not laugh anymore. And this is basically fault localization in behavioral models. So I told you knowledge is the key element of the system. You need to sit in the system we have knowledge. So I mentioned, I gave you already several examples of obviously you cannot fix a fault if you don't know how to fix it. Obviously you fix the fault ahead if you know everything on how to fix it before deploying it. Okay. In between, you may know how to do something if something else happened, but you may not know exactly what happened in which combination. Not because you don't have the whole information that you can have at some point, but because you cannot have the information. And I hope actually I gave you the feeling. You know, the feeling is if my competitor who manages part of the system changes the system autonomously because they want to do well. I had this fantastic experience. I had two daughters, and at the end of the summer, they both were flying back to home, same day, of course, to different airports, same time, same day to different airports. So I had actually been in touch with both of them, and so I parked in one airport, turned on my Skype to my kids, are you coming? Yes, and then I get this tweet saying, you must upgrade WhatsApp, because it's too, what's WhatsApp? Update, rush to the terminal, and then everything crashed, and I could not recover until Okay, so this is exactly the thing. So you need to actually, there are things that you do not expect to happen, you know, and you cannot actually predict them. And you need, so basically you need to have some knowledge, some information, some models that are sitting there, maybe forever, maybe for nothing, or hopefully for something. Okay? Now, what I like to do now is not to give you the full list of all the possible models we can use, because it's going to be really boring, but to give you some information which is the new part, okay? So basically, my vision, and this is my line of research and the line of research of a lot of the community, okay, we can stop here. You know, we have been repeating for 80 years now, because software is getting older and older, that people do not write specification, people do not write requirements, people do not produce models. It is true. I mean, I even added that we cannot, not only that we do not, we cannot. So I ignore that part of static models. You can hope to have a lot of information borrowed from the design. What I'm looking for is actually to try to figure out the dynamic information. So I will tell you about dynamically inferring models and try to see how they work and how we can infer them and how can be used. Now I will focus first on that part, which is monitoring the models. And I give you a couple of information, and then you tell me whether you're already aware or not of model inference. Okay, basically, I have you have the system behavior. The system behavior is that blue spot, and then you have samples, the yellow dots. And then what you can have is basically try to generate a model, and you have three possibilities. One is overgeneralization. So you can basically expand your yellow dots so that they cover everything of the system, but even more. Or you can have over-restriction, really very, very conservative, and so you get not all the possibilities of the system. Or you can be both, which is the most common thing. Now, what happens is that, yes, it depends on the sample. Okay. If I execute my mathematical or my calculator once and say 2 get 4, what is that? Any clue?
Over restriction.
Yeah. No, the same. I'm just inferring what the system is. If I have a system that even 2 and 2 gives me 4, what is the functionality of the system? An addition. No, it's a multiplication. So that's the point, you know. It depends obviously on the. No, sorry. No, it's both. Sorry, no. I was not trying to actually create some anxiety about you got to do basic mathematics. It's more like no, but the idea is the following, you know, because this is obvious, you know. Of course, you know, it's a very simple example that I also use in the classes. But the idea is you get a sample and you infer something, maybe good, you know. Because it may actually be a multiplication, but maybe bad, may not be a multiplication, or maybe not be a sum, okay? And you know, this is, you know, think about the complex system, you know? I have this stream of data that I cannot disclose, but it's, you know, it's the window of, several windows of traffic of real systems, you know? How can I know whether, you know, that particular behavior is due because they actually collected the traffic at the final game of the Champions League, and so people got crazy with their messages and the system was overloaded? It was actually the New Year Eve, which is same with similar behavior. Actually, we would not be surprised how similar the behaviors are, just different spread, and from the data. Okay. How do I know whether this is common or not? This is actually the problem. So basically, it depends on the sample, but depends also on the technique. So basically, deriving dynamically models, I have material to tell you about 4 different ways. One is called the K-tail, which is a well-known, ancient is a bad word, more than 30, 40 years old technique, which is the basis of most approaches today. I have few slides, one slide to present you Dicon, which is a more modern, not that modern anymore, because now a couple will do, but you know, it's quite well known. Adabo, that is a completely different approach, which is interesting, and GK tail, which is our approach to put things together. So it's not because it's our, but because we put things together. Now, before continuing, how many of you know K-tape? Don't be shy, because if you say no, you get the lecture. You know? How many of you know Daikon? Some. How many of you know Adabu? I don't ask the last one because it's not I don't want to embarrass you. Okay, so I go through, I'll be fast with Daikon because some of you know that I don't want to. No, I think now the core point is now we move to sort of specific technology which is much older than actually the program of self-healing, but I think I want to give you a feeling how we can make it. The good thing to the GK is that at some point, actually soon, I will show you how to use that information to localize the fault, which is the interesting part. Okay, so K-tail, basically the idea is you go from event sequences, so your yellow spot, to some model, the final state machine, which is the big yellow area. Okay? Now, how do I do that? Basically, you do two steps. One is you build what is called a prefix tree acceptor, PTA, and the second one you build the final state endonym. Building the PTA is trivial. You get an initial node, okay, and then you start saying, this is where the touch screen will be great. From the first trace is A to A, so you go from 1 to 2, then it's from A to A again, from 2 to 3, then A to B, from 3 to 6, then B to C, from C to 10. Okay, so if you read 1, 2, 3, 6, 10, the sequence of labels is A, A, B, C, which is actually, no, it's not. If you read 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 11, you read A, B, C, which is actually the first sequence. Then you read 1, 2, 4, 7, A, B, C is the second, and you have the fourth. So that's actually almost trivial. And then what you do is you actually merge states. How do you do that? There is this idea of K future. Okay? And I went with K over 2, which is actually the common stuff because it's easy. So the idea is you merge states that are equal. Okay. Let's look at the diagram. None of the states is equal. They have a different label. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that doesn't count, of course. How are they equal? But they are equal if they lead you to the same next state. Okay. So basically, the core idea, which traces back to the work by Robin Milner, by Hennessy, by David Boyle, I don't know if you know that work is called observational equivalence. So the idea is actually you build systems, in that case, where process algebras. Are you familiar with process algebras? Who is familiar with process algebra? Who knows Robin Milner? I met him actually, talked to him. Robin is a Turing Award winner. He is, I would say, one of the. I will list it in the top 10 computer scientists ever, actually. Robin is famous for CCS. I forgot what it stands for, but it's a calculus. How many of you know TCS? Tony Hall, CSP? Okay, same family. Same family. Okay, so the idea is, Hennessy and Nicola, they did actually work on that. The idea is you want to compare. If you are familiar with CCS, with CSP, with Floyd, the idea is actually if you want to actually compare machines or compare specifications. In that case, are algebraic, but you can actually represent them as diagrams, basically. And the idea is, in general, you want to not to actually look at the whole stuff, but what is important. What is important is what you see. So you don't look at everything, but what happens next. So two states are the same if you cannot distinguish them from the past, from the future, sorry. So the idea is, I got to a state and I have, let's say, I got to state 11 and 13. They are the same. Because it cannot happen anything after. So if I sit there, if I put you in one of the states, 10, 11, 13, and you only can look ahead, can you tell me which states you're in? But if I put you in 2 or 4, can you tell me whether you're in 2 or 4? Yes, because 2, you actually see 2 doors, door A and door B. 4, you see only one door, door C. Right? Now, the key idea is, I can do that for infinitely long sequences. No. So we do it for finitely long sequences, and after several studies, people decided that the good number is 2. Which works actually. It works again. I was listening. Unfortunately, I missed the first part of Brent's lecture, but I don't think I got everything. But one thing he was actually indicating. Luckily enough, I actually got the presentation of his schoolmate last week. So about one thing they insist is when you actually do natural languages, you have a complexity which is different from programming languages. So the idea is we are repetitive enough that if you don't distinguish anything in 2 steps, it's very unlikely to distinguish them in many more steps. Not completely true. So you use this K2 equivalence, the 2 future. So the 2 future of node 2, A and B. Actually, sorry, 2 is AA or AE or BC. Because if you sit in 2, just imagine that. Look ahead and you see that you can go down from A and then A, or A and then B, or B and then C, and nothing else. So that's 2 future of 2. 2 future of 5, you sit there and do BC or AA. You can also do AAC, but you don't care, because you look at 2, you only have a division of depth 2. 2 future of 11 is empty, and so on. So basically, you start from this observation, and then you say, okay, I take 8 and 12. 2 future of 8 is C. 2 future of 12 is C. Okay, they are the same. So I merge the 2 steps. You see the animation, you go from 8, 12 to 8, 12. Okay? Then you look again to future of 11 and 13, you already experienced that you don't distinguish them, so you merge them. Then you go again to future of 2 and 3, believe me, they are the same. Okay, they should be the same, you merge them, 2 and 3, and so you continue and you get an automaton. So this is clear. Okay, now of course it's parametric, depends, okay, blah, 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 but it is very fair. Okay, this traces back to this thing. Now, obviously, you have an impact of K. Large K, good approximation, but tiny. Small K, bad approximation, good tiny. And again, 2 seems to be a nice factor. Daikon, one slide on Daikon, and then I give you a coffee break, and then I come back to the next. Okay, so basically, the reason why I present Daikon, not only because I need it, but because it's actually the first time that people move from building machines. Actually, KTEL is all because this idea of building finite state machines from sequences traces back from the early time of mathematicians. Mathematics is actually a very interesting, nice graph theory. The idea of building finite state machine from abstracting from the single. It's very fascinating. And by the way, there are millions of very complicated algorithms. I was frightened when I saw them, and none of them is actually modern. So many of them are not that useful for us because again, they were trying to try. If you generate sequences randomly, you don't go anywhere. If you actually monitor the system and you look at the monitored sequences, it's perfect. So 2 future is ridiculously bad if you generate sequences randomly. It's amazingly good if you actually get sequences from executing from traces of the program execution. Because the program does statement 1, 2, and 3, and there is an if either 4 or 5, and it repeats that over and over. So that's regularity as much. So you start with Daikon is nice because you move from states to values, and this is quite new. Actually, I don't think mathematicians have thought about it. You actually get values. You get, for example, unit cost and total cost of variables that in one shot the value is 4 and 5, and then 3 and 3, and then 1 and 8, and then 7 and 12, and blah, blah, blah. And then you actually want to infer invariance. Okay, now the idea is you want to infer invariance from the traces. Okay, the variance are relation between values, so you want to know. Question, is unit cost always less than total cost? Or is unit cost less or equal than total cost? Or is, okay. Now, and so you get all your possible relations. Of course, you know, if I start with plus, equal, less or equal, I cannot get greater than the constant. I cannot get something that unit cost square root plus total cost square is less than 100. I cannot get that, but I don't care. Okay, and then you actually want to do, the first step is basically, you actually produce all the possible invariants. So unit cost can be equal to total cost, I get unit total cost, and I get, without caring about the values, and I get unit cost is less than, or can be less or equal, or something. And I actually combine everything. Now, you know, the tool does not do that explicitly, but in principle that's what you do. And then what you do is basically you execute and you pick up only the invariants that actually are satisfied in that execution. So if you execute the first time you get 4 and 5, 4 is less than 5, is not equal than 5, is less or equal than 5. Their sum is greater than unit. I don't know whether it's true or not. It is true for that specific execution. Then you go to the second one, and you know, you continue to do this job. And then the very last step is that you get many information, some of which is really relevant, some other is not. So question. I run my system, I deposit my, sorry, I'm recording, so I should actually So I deposit my check, €1,000 check, and then I withdraw €2,000 and I get red. And then, and is it true that any time that I deposit and withdraw, I go to red? The chances are 50%. You know? Yes, it may be, you know, it may be true or not, but you know, the chance to be less or equal. So one execution, chance that is actually randomly, a random execution is possible. I do it millions of times, and I always go red. Okay, then at least my behavior, you know, is predictably that way. So it's an invariant. It's a quasi-invariant. It's not an invariant really. It's something that actually I assume it may be true. It has been true in the past. And you know, you can use a very simple probability theory to actually define the thresholds and decide whether you actually is likely to be not just randomly generated. And then, of course, if A is less than B, and A is equal to B, and A is less or equal to B, A is equal to B is absolute invariance. Okay, that's